Hi guys, so I'm going to explain the Curlin pump to you. This is the Curlin pump. This is a very common pump that we're going to see in the field quite often, and I'm going to explain the different parts, how to use it, how to prime it, and how to infuse a patient with it. Now there's three main parts to this pump. There's the main screen, there's the top piece right here where the drip tubing goes into, and then there's the back, which is the batteries. Batteries are pretty straightforward. Just slide to unlock. As you can see here, it says unlock. So slide to unlock, and then slide the door off, and you have your batteries, or you can replace them as needed. Slide it back on, click to lock, and then that's how you do the batteries. The top piece, this is where we put our IV tubing in. You'll see where it says lift to open. You'll lift that, and then what you'll be able to do is open this. And what you'll notice on the inside of this is that there's kind of a soft part. There's a square right here, a large square on this side. And then you'll notice that there is an arrow with a small square on this side. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay your tubing in and across, and I'll show that in a little bit. Then what you'll do is once your tubing's in, you'll close this and then you push that to lock. And again, we're going to go through that again later in the video. This is the front of our pump. This is the control panel. So we have our on buttons to note here are the on off button, the run pause, the yes and the no, the up and the down arrows, the prime button, and then as well as the numbers 1 through 0. Okay, so now those are the different parts of the pump. So now we are going to go into learning how to program the pump. So first thing we're going to do is turn the pump on. And it'll go through its startup process, and you'll notice that it gives us here in a second that it'll give us it will give us a power source, so it'll tell you how full your batteries are. Things to note here is if your battery is less than half, that you replace the batteries prior to starting your infusion. If the batteries are at less than half prior to your infusion and you start your infusion on a half battery, then at some point during that infusion the pump will stop and not allow you to infuse due to low battery. So it's always a good rule of thumb to make sure that you replace the batteries prior to starting your infusion if they're at half power. Anything above half you're fine, but if you're at half power, replace the batteries prior to starting. So then we're going to go to our program screen here. You have program and library. We're always going to use program. You'll hit yes. Then you'll see several different options here. So there's continuous, the PCA, TPN, intermittent, and then variable. The two that we are going to use, pretty much primarily only going to use, are the variable and the continuous. 9 times out of 10, you're going to use the variable setting. This is so that we can program in our titration schedule. Again, you'll notice that there's yes, so yes is enter, and arrows just move. So if you want to move to the next screen and save your answers, you always hit yes. So hit yes, and you'll see this screen. So this is just verifying that we're using mLs. There is no delay, and that we want to move to the next screen. Again, we're going to move through this screen hitting yes. So this screen, you'll see bag volume, number of doses, KVO rate, and then next. Our bag volume is going to be our total volume of the infusion. So say our infusion is 400 mils, that would be our total volume. Good rule of thumb when you're programming these pumps is always go over what your total volume is. So if your total volume is 400 mLs of medication, then always go over 15-20 mLs to allow yourself to have, so if you have to clear bubbles, or if something happens where you have to reprogram it, or something happens where the pump thinks that it has less in it than it actually does, then you can continue and finish your infusion. So, good rule of thumb is always program over about 15-20 mLs over your total infusion. So if our total volume for this infusion is going to be 400 mLs, we're going to program in 420 mLs. Then we're going to hit yes, not the arrow. So if you look here and see, I'm going to hit the arrow. So we'll hit the arrow and it won't save. You see how the 420 went back to 0? So when we're moving from field to field and we want our information to save, we need to hit yes. So put in our volume, going about 15 to 20 mils over our total volume. We'll hit yes, enter. Number of doses, so this is the number of titrations, or the number of times that we're going to titrate. We're going to keep this simple, and we are going to go from 50 mLs to 150 mLs. So we'll put in 3, number of doses of 3, because we're titrating 3 times. Then we're going to hit yes. The KVO rate you can always keep at 0.1. Then we're going to hit yes, the next, yes. And then this is titration 1 of 3. So our first titration, like I said, we're going to do 50 to a max of 150. So our total volume, we're going to skip. So we're going to skip that field, we're going to use our arrow. So we're going to arrow down. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put in our rate. So our first rate is going to be 50 mLs an hour. Then we're going to hit yes. Again, if you hit the arrow, see how it doesn't save? So you want to make sure you hit yes to save your field. So we'll do it again. Put in 50 mLs an hour. You'll hit yes. Then we'll go into our time. So we're gonna infuse at this rate for 30 minutes. So we'll put in 30, and you'll notice that there's hours and minutes. So this, on the right side it's minutes, on the left side it's hours. So in this case we're only doing 30 minutes. So we're gonna hit yes to save our field. Then you'll notice that it automatically calculates volume to be infused for that titration. So we're going to infuse a total of 25 mLs for that infusion. And then we have to cycle through and make sure that this is accurate. So we're infusing 25 mLs. So yes. Then we're infusing at a rate of 50 mLs an hour. Yes. Then we're infusing at this rate for 30 minutes. Yes. Then we want to go to the next field. Yes. So now we're at 2 doses of 3. So then we are going to skip the total volume to be infused. So we're going to arrow down. Then we'll put in our rate. This rate is going to be 100. So we're going to do 100 mLs an hour. We're going to save it, yes. Then we're going to put in our total time, so 30 minutes. We're going to save it, yes. And you'll see that it automatically calculates our total volume. So 50 mLs will be infused during this titration at a rate of 100 mLs an hour, yes, and then 30 minutes, yes. Then we're going to go to their next field, yes. So this is a trick with the Curlin pump. This is our last field to fill out. So this is our last rate, and it's not going to titrate or change anymore. So with this one, what I want you to do is put in the total volume that you originally put in. So if we put in 420, so I want you to put in 420, and you'll see that it says a max of 345, because the computer is calculating that for the first and second doses that we've used 25 and 50 mLs already, so there can't be 420 mils in the total volume. But what we'll do is we'll use that rate that it showed us, the max rate, to put in here. So I'm going to do it one more time. So 420, and you'll see it says a max rate of 345 mLs. So we're going to put 345 in our total volume to be infused. Then we're going to put yes. We're going to put in our max rate, which is going to be 150. You'll see 150 mLs, and we're going to hit yes. And then it automatically calculates our time. So this infusion is, or this last rate is going to run for 2 hours and 18 minutes. So then we're going to hit yes, yes. Then what we're going to do is we're going to review everything. So this is our total doses of 3, our total runtime of 3 hours and 18 minutes. Our total volume is going to be 420 mLs, and then we're going to move. So to move through these fields, make sure you hit yes. You can move through the fields with the arrows, but it won't allow you to move to the next field until you hit enter. So start at the top, hit yes, say okay, that's accurate, this is accurate, this is accurate. Then you can go ahead and hit run. If you want to review your program, you can hit no, and it'll bring you back into basically to review the program. Here what you can do is you can just hit yes, and you can review the program that you programmed. So again, so total volume of 420 mLs, we have 3 doses, KVO rate is 0.1, and then we're going to move to the next screen. And again, you have to hit yes, not the arrow. So our first rate, 25 mLs an hour at 50, our total volume for this titration is 25 mLs at a rate of 50 mLs an hour for 30 minutes. We're going to hit yes to move through this program. Then we'll move to the next one, hit yes. Then we'll see the last one. Scroll through, make sure everything is accurate. And then this is where we would load our tubing and then start our infusion. This is the tubing that we're going to use with our Curlin pumps. Now there's a couple of different 4 main areas of this tubing that you need to be aware of. So you have your vent spike, or you have your spike. This goes into the medication that we are going to be infusing. Then we have our blue small square. Then we have our large yellow square. Then we have our connection that goes to the patient. Things to note on this IV tubing is there is no vent on the Curlin tubings. So anytime you are using a Curlin pump, you need to make sure if you are using a glass vial that you are using a vented spike or some type of vent on that vial so that you don't create a vacuum when you're infusing. If you do not use a vented spike or some type of venting device on a glass vial with this tubing, you will have issues where your infusion will stop due to the amount of vacuum that is created onto that glass vial. So very important to note, anytime you're using a Curlin pump, you need to have some type of vent on a glass vial. Then this part here in the middle, this is the part that goes into the pump. This part is stretchy, and you'll notice on the yellow part here, there is a little spring. It's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can get it to focus. You'll notice that there's a little spring in there. And this is a used tubing that I've used for demonstration already. So on new tubing, what you'll notice is there will be a little tab on the opposite end of this spring that you will break off. You'll twist it and break it. And what that little tab does is it keeps the spring in and keeps the tubing open. What I like to do, and a good rule of thumb, is when you get this tubing, it's a new tubing, it has that little tab that's sticking off of this plastic piece, and holding that spring and keeping that spring compressed, I break that tab off. And the reason being is because that gives me control to prime my tubing. So once I have spiked my medication, I will press on this plastic piece, and that will open my tubing. And that will give me control to be able to prime this tubing at the rate or when I'm ready to. All right, so now I'm gonna show you how to load this IV tubing into the pump. So we have the top piece that we showed you in the beginning. You'll pop it open, lift it open, you'll lift it, and then again, you'll notice that on this side, there is a large square there. See if we can get the focus. You'll notice that there's a large square on that side, and that there's an arrow, a blue arrow, with a small square on this side. So that's where we're gonna take our squares and then put them in there. So you'll notice on this side, the plastic piece on new tubing will have that tab that you need to break. If you do not break that tab off, one, you're gonna be leaking medication everywhere, and then two, you will not be able to load this into the pump. So make sure you break that tab off. It's just a twist tab. You'll grab it and twist it. Once you do that, you will take it with the stretchy side or stretchy piece in the middle. You'll load it in the big square into the big square side, and then the small square into the small square side. Once you've done that, you're gonna close this, and then you're gonna press down and then press the lock. And it'll be flush all the way across. If you notice that the pump isn't closed all the way, it's lifted, that is incorrect. Lift the lock again, push down, lock the pump. Once it's in there and it's flush across the top, then you have successfully loaded your IV tubing into your pump. All right, so now we have our tubing in our pump, and everything is ready to go. Now there's two ways you can prime this. You can either prime via gravity by squeezing the big block and depressing that spring and allowing the fluid to flow through the IV tubing, or you can use the pump to prime. I prefer to prime by gravity, but there is times with this tubing, especially when getting the infusion started on a glass vial, where the priming via the pump is easier and makes more sense to do it that way. So if you're running into issues where you're unable to prime your pump on a glass vial via gravity, then use the pump priming setting. So this is the screen that you'll get right before, this is after we've reviewed our program and right before we're going to start our infusion. You'll see at the very bottom here it has options and it has prime. And you'll notice down here the green button in the right hand corner says prime or bolus. You're going to hit that. Then what you're going to do is it comes into this. It warns you we want to disconnect the patient. Make sure that the patient is not connected when you're priming. It's very important. We don't want to prime air or excess medication into our patients. So make sure anytime you're priming that you're disconnected from your patient. You're going to release all the clamps. So this means the white clamp here. Then what you're going to do is you're going to hold your prime key, and it'll start to prime. And you'll see that it actually says how many mLs that it's primed. And this is why we program over our total infusion rate, because say we use this to prime, then the computer thinks that we have 1 ml less medication in there. So at the end of the infusion, we will have extra medication in the bag or in the vial, because the computer thinks that it's not there. So that's why we always prime or always program over our total volume that we expect. But that is how you prime via this pump. Once that's done, you'll see that if you need to continue, you will hit prime. If you are done, you're gonna hit yes. Then it brings you back to the screen, and then we're gonna hit our run infusion. Now, it's gonna warn you saying that because we used 1 ml to prime it, the computer thinks that there's less medication in our total volume. That's fine. Hit yes, continue. And then now you are infusing the patient. To stop your infusion, you would hit the run pause. You would pause, and that will pause your infusion and allow you to disconnect your patient, let them go to the bathroom, or if you're fighting bubbles or anything like that, that'll allow you to pause your infusion. This is just a little tip for when you're using the Curlin pump and tubing to help mitigate bubbles. Small micro bubbles oftentimes will develop and be a headache for us when we're infusing patients. The best way to prevent bubbles is, one, to make sure that your IVIG is at room temperature. Cold IVIG tends to create more bubbles than room temperature IG. So make sure that the medication, we're doing that education with our patients to have them take that medication out the night before, or at least a couple hours before our scheduled infusion time. The next tip is to make sure that when we're priming our medication, that we are trying to go slowly and not prime any bubbles through our tubing. Try to get all those little bubbles out prior to priming them through. That being said, it's not always possible to do that. And if you get bubbles in your tubing and you're infusing your patient and you keep getting air and pump alarms, you'll notice that this is the sensor for the pump. And what happens is that bubbles will get clogged up or stuck on this side and back up against this sensor. That's a good thing because we don't want to infuse our patients with air, so the pump is doing its job. But if you just have a few micro bubbles that are building up on this side, on the soft side of the tubing, what you can do is stop your infusion. You can depress the spring on your sensor, and then what you can do is flick the soft side, and allow those little micro bubbles to pass through the sensor. Now, we don't want a ton of air, so if this whole thing is filled with bubbles, then there's a problem and we need to just reprime our tubing. But if there are only a few small bubbles that are backed up against the sensor and it's not enough that cause the patient any harm, then what we can do again is depress that and allow those small micro bubbles to pass through so that we can continue our infusion. Once we get those bubbles from the soft side past the sensor, then we would load our tubing back into our pump, and then we would resume our infusion. Okay guys, we have come to a close of this video. Thank you for watching this tutorial on how to use the Curlin pump. If you have any questions about this pump or would like a in-person demonstration on how to utilize this pump, please reach out to your nurse manager and they will be able to assist you with doing a in-person demonstration or a live demonstration to use this pump. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about infusing your patient, about utilizing this pump, please reach out to your nurse manager immediately and we will get back to you and try to assist you and get you comfortable and competent to use this pump.